meeting ID followed by pound.
Good evening, Spelman sisters, and welcome to our Wealth Building Wednesday series that is hosted by the National Alumni Association of Spelman College for the Atlanta chapter in collaboration with Bank of America. This is the second part of our series, and I want to start us off by introducing to you all who we have speaking with us tonight. We will start with Naima Judge. She is a market investment executive. Naima, just wave your hand. There she is. We also have Desi Nash, who is also a market investment executive. Desi, you want to wave? And we have our Tiffany Eubanks Sanders, who is with us again, who is a market executive. For tonight's presentation, we would ask that you keep your cameras off until the time that comes for Q&A, and also keep your phones or your computers on mute so that we can hear the great information. Tonight's session is the 3 P's of investing: purpose, principle, and passion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany to kick us off and take us through this wonderful session.
Well, thank you, Adrienne, and thank you, ladies, for joining us this evening. I tell you, this is such a tremendous opportunity for us to do what we love to do, which is create empowerment amongst not only just the Black community and African American community, but Black women specifically. And this program, this series was created by Black women for Black women with the real purpose of creating education and awareness around a topic that quite candidly is often taboo in the Black community, which is financial management and how to create generational wealth going forward. You know, in this current time frame, this critical time frame, I think what's been underscored many times over the last several months as we've been in the midst of this pandemic health crisis is the fact that the Black community has been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 and all of the remnants that come from it. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we have been disproportionately impacted around ways to create wealth within our community, which leads to lack of proper health care, health insurance, lack of access to the right type of health care, so on and so forth. So there's not a better use of my time, along with my colleagues, Naima and Desi, than to spend with you all this afternoon and continue the discussion that we started back in September. For those of you who joined us then, welcome back. And for those of you who are new to the discussion, we welcome you as well. Because this is a journey that we are on, and I have been working alongside with these ladies as well as Adrian, your esteemed president, to make sure that we have a value-added series that really walks you through a number of different steps, a number of different critical topics that we just have never been taught about, and we want to change that over the course of the next several months. And so we started off our last discussion talking very simply about the state of Black wealth and really trying to ground and create a baseline understanding as it relates to the state of the Black community as it relates to wealth and wealth creation in this country today. And for those of you who joined us, what I think we all walked away with was the fact that we're in a pretty dire situation. But what I hope you also walked away with is the fact that we can change that today. And it's this group of women in this moment around this particular topic that can really forge a path and move us beyond where we are today. So I'm so pleased to be joined this evening by my colleagues who are, very simply put, some of the baddest Black women you'll ever meet. They have transcended in their careers in an industry that quite candidly has not been one that was created for Black women, nor has it been welcoming of Black women. Each of them in their own right, they are running the investment portfolios and activities, strategies for the markets that they sit within. Dr. Desi Nash is the market investment executive for Virginia, the state of Virginia. And she does a phenomenal job in terms of leading the strategy for our private bank clients within the state of Virginia from an investment management perspective. And then our colleague Naima Judge is the marketing investment executive for the state of Georgia. And so she sits right near and dear close to where your campus is in Atlanta, and works on behalf of Bank of America Private Bank to drive the strategy, the investment strategy for our private banking clients within that market. And so I'm not going to say anything further because these ladies have a fantastic discussion lined up for you all tonight that's packed with not only great information, but also some takeaways that we'll leave behind with Adrian to share with you all as you continue this journey along with us going forward. So Naima and Desi, I'm going to turn it over to you ladies.
Thank you, Tiffany, so much for your gracious and wonderful introduction. And I share with people, I'm Dr. Desi Nash because I have a PhD in finance. So I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a financial doctor. Well, welcome, ladies, and thank you for taking this time this evening to join us. We are so excited today to share with you the 3 Ps of investing. We believe this is a stepping stone to help close the wealth gap in our community. And by the end of the presentation, hopefully we would have provided you with a foundation to get started to lay that stone. And if you've already laid the stone, to continue to build upon it. So let's just move right into our agenda and go through what we'll cover today. The next slide, please.
Oh, do we have the presentation teed up?
Is there a presentation? One moment. Tiffany, we don't seem to have the presentation on this end.
Okay, let me, let's see, let me forward
If they can make me the presenter, I can pull it up, or allow me to share my screen.
You can share your screen.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Give me 1 second. Thank you for your patience. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent.
We're good.
All right, go ahead, Desi.
All right, thank you so much, Naima. I appreciate that. And thank you, ladies, for your patience with that. So our agenda, what we'll be covering today is where are we currently? We'll also discuss some myths and more importantly, dispel those myths. We'll share with you the various journeys women can take when it comes to investing. We'll give you some actionable ideas, and then we'll close it out by bringing the 3 Ps together. So let's begin with where we are currently. As you can see from this slide, 81% of Black mothers are breadwinners. And single mothers, as you can see on the chart, account for the largest percentage of breadwinners. And even when that is compared with other ethnicities, Black single mothers are a higher percentage of breadwinners. And then even when you look at married Black women, they also account for a higher percentage of breadwinners within their families. So what this shares with you is that we do bring home the bacon. Black women, our families depend on us. So we can move on to the next slide. And this is a very compelling slide here, and it's unemployment. As you can see, in April of 2020, when we were in the midst of the pandemic and the economic crisis, the unemployment rate shot up to over near 15%. Now, as the economy has opened back up and people are returning to work, the unemployment rate has declined to a little less than 8%. But if you look at the impact that it has had on Black women, At the height of the economic and pandemic, Black women were at 16%. And even as we're coming out of this, we're still at double-digit unemployment. And you look at that versus white women who were on par with the national unemployment rate back in October, they're a little less than 7% right now. So you can see that unemployment has affected us in a very dire way. The next slide is about the pay gap. And it's common knowledge that women make less than men. But what you can see here from this slide is that Black women make 62 cents for every dollar that white men make. And it's 79 cents white women make. So we still are behind when it comes into the pay gap. So all that I've shared with you in these few slides of where we are right now in this current gap is one of the reasons why we have this wealth gap in our community. And I know what I've said, it probably gives you this feeling of doom and gloom because it certainly did me. But what Naima and I want to do today is to give you some hope. And this hope is this first stanza from the Maya Angelou poem, Still I Rise. And in spite of where we are currently, ladies, we can rise from this. But to get there, we've got to talk about some principles. And the next slide. So let me share with you how we're going to build upon this and close the wealth gap. If you recall, our presentation is about the 3 P's of investing. And that is the first P, principle. And please understand and remember the definition of a principle. It's a fundamental truth that serves as the foundation. So the first principle is income is not wealth. And what do I mean by that? Income is something that you receive on a regular basis, and it can stop at any point in time if you lose your job or if you sell an asset. But wealth is value that can grow over time and can continue to grow. So remember that first principle is income is not wealth. The next slide, and this is an important principle, is save and invest first. Not save or invest second or third, but save and invest. Why? Because investing creates value. But before you can save, you've got to get there. And to get there, you have to adjust your budget and prioritizing saving and investing. Now, what I'm going to do is share with you this secret. And this secret is 2 words, the stock market. I hear this all the time. I'm not messing with this stock market. But there's some misconceptions about the stock market, and these have turned into principles. But what I want to share with you today, the importance of the stock market. So moving on to our next slide, we've got to change our focus. If you want to build wealth, you've got to reframe your focus. As you can see from this slide, if you invest in the stock market, it grows over time. But you look at that relative to wages, they rarely keep up with inflation or the cost of living. So if you think that your wages are going to build wealth, this slide should tell you it's not going to happen. Wages come in waves of cents and a few dollars. Investing comes in the terms of legacy and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, moving on to the next slide, I want to show you an example of our aversion to the stock market. And this is our market participation rate. As you can see, it's lower than our white counterparts, significantly lower. Even when we throw in income and our income increases, our participation increases, but relative to our white counterparts, it's significantly less. Then when you throw another nugget in there, higher education, we still participate at a lower rate than our counterparts. So in addition to our lower participation, we are also conservative. And let me share with you what I mean by that. If you look at this table of stock Of those of African Americans who own stock directly, it's only 6.3%. That is significantly lower than our counterparts. If you look at even the households, the US households, they're double digits. White counterparts, they're double digits. And even when we attain a higher net worth, it's a little less than half that we own stocks directly compared to our white counterparts. And then if we take a deep dive into it and look up the makeup of financial assets, which is a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, as African Americans, our portfolios are only diversified with these assets about 15% compared to our white counterparts who are over 35% and even at all US households. And all of this affects our ability to close the wealth gap. But what also affects our ability to close the wealth gap are these myths. And sometimes these myths have become principles. And if you remember what I said about a principle, it is a fundamental truth. Well, a myth is not a fundamental truth, but over time, these have become truths. And what I want to do is dispel those. These are the three most common myths that Naima and I hear. Investing takes too much money, it's too risky, and it's too complicated. But what I want to share with you today is how we're going to dispel those myths. So moving to the first slide, if you remember our principle, save and invest first. The myth of it takes too much money is easily dispelled. If you just look at this chart, you can start with as little as $50 a month, which is $12.50 a week. If you took $50 a month and invested it for 40 years, you would have over $100,000. I promise you, your wages won't grow like that. But if you increase that just to $100 a month, you're at over $200,000. And if you increase it to $200, you'd be over $400,000. So you can see how just a little bit can grow over time. Now we're in the midst of a pandemic, and this is probably an opportunity to consider looking at your budget and thinking of ways that you could reallocate money, because I've shown you here that it does not take that much money. So reallocating what you save from dry cleaning, lunch, I told you $50 a month is $12.50 a week. That's lunch. Think about putting that aside and investing it. The next myth is around risk. And moving to the next slide, I hear this all the time. It's too risky. I don't want to lose my money. That's not gambling. But we've got to reframe how we think about the stock market and investing. Investing is long-term. If you look at this chart, yes, if you were invested for one day, you have a 45% chance of losing your money. But what you can see here is the longer that you're in the market, the probability of losing your money goes down significantly. You can look at it from 1 day to 1 month to a year, 5 years to 10, and to 20 years. So the risk is not the stock market. The risk is not understanding your time frame. The next slide is about too complicated. I hear people say all these terms that they hear on social media, perhaps from your friends and families. You know, people don't know where to start. All of it sounds complicated, but it's just about the basics. Just having basic knowledge, you can get started. So now as we go through this journey, what I'd like to do right now is turn it over to Naima so she can talk to you about the next part of the journey so we can continue to build this stepping stone. Naima?
Thank you, Desi. And, I just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you ladies and to share this information. If you can't tell already, this is literally a passion of ours and something that we love to do and to talk about in our community. So, as Desi said, I can reiterate as being a female, a Black female in investments, I can't tell you how many times I have heard many of these questions, especially when you think about watching a lot of those investment programs and saying to yourself, you may not even know what they're actually talking about. But I'm here to tell you that investments does not have to be too complicated. And I mentor students all the time. And when we talk about investments, one of the things that I share with them is big words don't impress me, little words do. And so I make it my goal and my aim to use words that any person can understand as it relates to investments. So my challenge today with you is to not tell you everything you need to know about investments, but to really get you started and to give you this basic level that you can take with you and possibly have this aha moment to say, it's not as complicated as you think.
Right.
So because of that, I'm going to start with the basics. And I know for some of you, you already know this, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we think about how we can get started. And remember, I said I only have a couple of slides to try to dispel this myth. So I'm going to try to do it in 3, maybe 4 slides. So the first thing I'm showing here is there are 3 major asset classes, and each of them has their jobs. Cash here, the job of cash is to be liquid, to be readily available for you in time of need. It's something that you're able to exchange for goods or services. We know that, right? The second is equity. Equity means ownership. And oftentimes we hear the terminology stocks, right? And for our purposes, that's what we will be referencing. But it's important to understand that stocks are a type of equity. And their job essentially is to grow, to create value, or to appreciate over time. And that chart that Desi showed earlier, referencing the stock market as compared to wages, shows you how they do that. And then the final asset class is fixed income. And just as in the name, fixed income's job is to provide investors with income. And in layman's terms, right, many people say bonds. So equity, we utilize the term stocks. And for fixed income, we utilize the term bonds. But it's important to know that equity or stocks are a type of equity, and bonds are a type of fixed income. And let me give you an analogy. I'm someone that likes to use analogies when it comes to these things. I don't know about you, but I'm a shoe lover. And if you think about what an asset class is, shoes would be the asset class. And within shoes, you have your stilettos, you have your boots, you have your sandals, you have your sneakers, right? And so those are the types of shoes. So just like stocks are a type of equity, stilettos are a type of shoes, that being the asset class. So what I want you to take away here, there are 3 major asset classes: cash, equity, and for our purposes, we're thinking about stocks, and then fixed income. And for our purposes, we're thinking about bonds. The next thing that's imperative to know is this concept called the risk-return relationship. And this directly relates to people talking about it's too risky, right? The stock market may be too risky. But in general, it's risk versus reward. And what I'm showing here on this chart is essentially the more risk you take, the more potential return you may earn on your investments. And potential in both of those cases, potential risk and potential return, that is the key concept, right? Nothing is guaranteed, but a loss is not guaranteed and a gain is not guaranteed. But in general, as we think about evaluating investments over time, the more risk that you potentially take, the more opportunity that you have to appreciate your assets over a given period of time. And so this is the risk return relationship, and it's important to understand that. So I'm on my third slide, and when I want to bring this home as it relates to equities, cash, equities, and fixed income, I want you to focus your attention first on the left-hand side of the slide. And what we are talking about here is what goes into your asset allocation, or the makeup of your assets. What should you consider when you're thinking about how to invest, or how risky to be, or how conservative to be? And so as you can see here on that left-hand side, you have constraints. What are some of the things that are potentially holding you back? Do you need to have cash on hand for certain things? Maybe you're buying a house. And so that may be a constraint. That means you have to maintain a certain level of liquidity. The second thing is your risk tolerance, right? Are you going to be losing sleep at night if you see daily fluctuations in your investment portfolio? And Desi talked about how the longer term you invest, right, the less chance that you have of losing money. But oftentimes people have to consider, how they're able to tolerate risk. Next, you have time horizon, and this is really a critical piece of deciding how to allocate your investments. It's how long do you have? And back to that chart that Desi shared with you, that really means a lot, because over time, if there are losses in your portfolio, someone who has a longer term time horizon has more opportunity to recover those losses. Someone who has a shorter term time horizon may not want to take as much risk because they don't have that time to recover it. And then finally, your objectives, right? What are you trying to accomplish? What is this money for? Are you paying for college? Are you paying for travel? Are you trying to purchase real estate sometime in the future? So all of these things kind of come together as you're thinking about how to create your asset allocation. And then if you focus over here on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see those three major asset classes that I have plotted out for you. And what I would call this is a risk return spectrum. So you see on the right-hand side, you have equity. Equity is the asset class with the most risk. But again, you see underneath, you have more return. And down below, that would be someone who probably has a longer time horizon. Over to the the left of that risk spectrum, you have cash and fixed income. Those are your more conservative asset classes, right? There's less risk. You will not see many fluctuations in your money, but you also won't grow your money over time in a meaningful way by having all of your assets allocated to that end of the spectrum. And so one of the things that Desi and I do as we work with our clients is we help them to identify where they are on this risk spectrum. And so asset allocation, how you position your risky securities versus your conservative securities, or better said, for your $100, what percentage of your $100 do you invest in risky securities versus what percentage of your $100 do you invest in conservative type securities is really the most important decision that you can make. And it has the most impact on achieving your financial goals, more than whether or not you pick Google or Apple stock, right? More than whether you choose Nike or Under Armour as an investment. So when you think about the things that you need to know, you really need to know this as a starting point, as a basis, right? How is your $100 invested? Is it 100% conservative? And you understand that you're over there on that left-hand side with cash and fixed income? Or is it aggressive, right? And you understand that you're taking more risk, but you have potential for more return. And
Hey,
so,
Naima,
yes.
real quick before you move forward, can you address one of the questions we get oftentimes from people as it relates to this continuum is related to what stage or phase of life they're in? You know, are they younger, just now starting? Because I'm sure we've got many ladies on the phone who just graduated from college or just starting their career and probably have a little bit fewer obligations that they need to focus on. And then as you get older, can you talk a little bit about what just some general rules of thumb in terms of as you progress in age and in your career and stage of life, where you sit on that spectrum of risk?
Excellent. Thank you, Tiffany. And you led me right into my next slide. And so I want you all to focus on these two women that are at both ends of the spectrum, right? And so if we look at this woman that's on the left-hand side of the spectrum, they say, I am close to my investment goal, therefore I cannot take a lot of risk. The key here is the investment goal. So in general, if you think about someone who is younger, right? And potentially the investment goal could be retirement, then they have a long time before they reach that particular goal. If you think about, and so they can probably stand to be more aggressively invested, just like the young lady that's on the right-hand side. I have a long time before I reach my investment goal, therefore I can withstand risk. If you are someone who is further along in your career and maybe you're older and you're approaching retirement, then, and retirement is your goal, then essentially you probably can't afford to take a lot of risk and you should be on that conservative end of the spectrum. So the key is what your investment goal is. And oftentimes people define that as retirement. People can define that as maybe a home purchase or some large purchase that they want to make. But oftentimes in our industry, we think about, in general, that time frame as retirement and or after retirement and having your assets support your needs even though you aren't working anymore. And so a general rule of thumb that we oftentimes utilize, Tiffany, would be thinking about it from the standpoint of 100 minus your age. So I am 40-ish, I'll say 40 just to make it simple. And if I think about 100 minus my age, 40, then what's left is 60. And so at this stage or age, it is recommended as a starting point that I should have at least 60% of my assets that are invested for quite aggressively, and 40% of my assets that are invested conservatively. And so at the bottom here, you can see kind of these pie charts, and there's areas in between, right? But these are just big buckets. Starting right down the middle, you have that 50-50 approach. So if we go back to that 100 minus your age, someone that's 50 years old, the recommendation or starting point is that you would say 50% of my assets should be invested aggressively, 50% of my assets should be invested conservatively. And as I age, I dial that back and become more and more conservative because my time frame or my time horizon becomes shorter. So I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
And again, you know, it's important to understand what is the investment goal and how close you are to it. But I would say for someone starting out in their career, especially as they're thinking about investing in their 401k or some retirement plan, they should really consider being over on that closer to that right-hand side of the spectrum.
So clearly, Naima, one of the key takeaways out of this discussion is for all the ladies who are listening in this evening to really think about your personal situation and where you are and what your objective might be, which that could then or should then, when you parlay in where you are in your career, where you are in your life, really give you a good sense of how conservative or aggressive you might want to engage in for your investment portfolio and strategy.
Right, right. And to kind of wrap this up and bring this all home as we go back to the thought process around investments is too complicated. I'll give myself 4 slides, right? In 4 slides, really, I broke down for you, or I hope that I was able to break down for you the most important decision that you can make. One is understanding those 3 major asset classes, right? And more specifically, equity being the job of equity to be growth, and fixed income, the job to produce income. 2, that risk versus return relationship, understanding in general that the more potential risk you take, the more potential return you will get over time. And then putting that all together and understanding where you are on this spectrum based on your investment goal and or time horizon. That really is the most important decision you can make. And that is enough to really get you started. So I want to move now to our second P, which is purpose, right? The reason for which something is done. And I love this concept because as we think about everyone who is there with us, who's out there in the virtual world, you all are unique. You all have unique circumstances. So you're going to have a unique journey in your professional life, a unique journey in your personal life, and then of course, a unique journey in your investment life. And so from our perspective, we think about many women and many journeys. And here we wanted to kind of give you 3 examples, right, that maybe represent a subsector of women on different journeys. These are not all encompassing, but these are our 3 that we hear quite often. So our first woman is thinking about her investments, and she says her employer's plan is the only one or only investment that she has right now. All right, great. So what we would say, and Tiffany alluded to this, is review your allocation. Think about that spectrum and where you are. Think about that 100 minus your age and evaluate your 401k or 403b or whatever employer sponsor plan you have and see where you are on that spectrum. Obviously, take advantage if your employer offers a match, right? That should be the minimum that you invest in that plan. And then finally, this is something that I've done personally, and it's very timely now. For us at Bank of America, we are in our annual benefits. We're in our annual benefits timeframe where we have to decide on our benefits for next year. And it changes every year. And I will tell you from my perspective, I really don't know what exactly my pay will be in January, just because of the changes in costs of benefits, right? I have an idea, of course. So what I tend to do is I increase my 401k by 1% to 2% automatically every January, because I'm already adjusting based on the changes in the cost of my benefits. And then I adjust on the way down, essentially. So for that woman that's that she just has her employer sponsored plan, these are the things that we think that she should consider. There's someone else, right? Maybe they have a lump sum. Maybe there was a tax refund that they received, or some insurance proceeds, or just money that they don't have a use for now that we're essentially in a global pandemic, right? So for her, it is determine the purpose of the funds. That's critical, right? And evaluate your time frame. Those go hand in hand. Again, if you're thinking about utilizing those funds maybe to purchase a house in less than a year, then maybe you should leave them liquid. You don't want to take any risk, right? And then consider, if you have a longer term time horizon, are there some small businesses that you can invest in, right? Stocks in the stock market isn't the only way to build wealth. Real estate, if there's anything that I think that we're most comfortable with, it's real estate. And then of course, financial securities, as we're talking about right now. And then this third young woman says, I'm ready to incorporate investing in my budget. So maybe she already has her employer's plan, and she's doing those recommended things in that employer plan, but she doesn't have a lump sum, but she wants to start now. And as Desi said, you can start with as little as $50. So there are many providers out there that have minimums that will match what you're able to incorporate in your budget. Think about mutual funds. Again, it's sexy to talk about certain stocks, but mutual funds really create diversification at the very first dollar that you invest. And then invest in line with your allocation. That is the most important decision, and I can't stress that enough. So it's time to take action. And I love this quote from Beyonce because it talks about getting paid in equity. She didn't say pay me in dollars. She said pay me in equity. And as I said at the beginning, equity means ownership. So to me, that creates this idea of staying power, of wealth building, even in the event that income stops. So here's a couple things that we want to provide you with that you can get started. First and foremost, think with the end in mind, right? Think about your goals. What are you trying to accomplish? And we often think about not only personal goals and professional goals and writing those down, but we should also write down our financial goals, understanding our destination so we can plot out how we get there. And at the conclusion of this discussion, we will provide you with this financial goal template that you can utilize to fill out yourself. The second thing is know where you are in your financial journey. What are your financial strengths and weaknesses? And we also have, and we'll provide this know where you are questionnaire. It's really just a high level way for you to kind of ascertain some of those financial strengths and weaknesses. Is it all encompassing? No. Does it tell you you're in really good shape or really bad shape? Not necessarily, but I think it is something that we all should do and take a look at to really think about and be honest with ourselves in terms of where we are in our financial strengths and weaknesses. And then how to get started, right? So we've kind of put this into 4 big buckets. First and foremost, revisit your budget, right? How has your spending changed specifically during the pandemic? Can you reprioritize? Are there some things that you can reshuffle? Look at those financial goals as we've talked about. What has changed? What needs to change? And then what can you renegotiate, right? Can you get lower interest rates on things? You know, if you call and on a credit card and they say we can reduce it from 20% to 19%, take that extra percent, right? So revisit your budget and see how you can make improvements. The second thing, educate to get ahead, right? take some time to increase your financial knowledge.
Mhm.
Review that allocation. Are you overly conservative? Are you overly aggressive? Next, understand what benefits are available to you. There are so many resources out there. And I know, and I would just speak for Bank of America, we have so many benefits that help to educate our employees as well as our community. And then I think this is the most critical: pay it forward. Share what you have learned, because that's how we are able to lift each other up. Retirement and other investments, don't panic. Stick to that long-term approach, right? If you're early in your career and you're thinking about investing and you're thinking about it from a retirement standpoint, stick to your long-term approach. I will tell you that in March, and many people probably saw how the stock market crashed, right? And the stock market hit a high on February 19th. And between February 19th and March 21st, it fell by approximately 35%. We have essentially gained that back at this point in time in the year. And that is a short period of time. But over a longer period of time, this will just be a blip in history. Make it automatic, right? Set it and forget it. I know you all have heard that. Increase your contributions, build it into your budget. And again, as we talked about, consider investing in those three areas. Find an advisor. Seek help where you need it. I'm in investments and I have an advisor. So if you don't, interview multiple people, right? Understand that they are vying for your business and you want to be comfortable with the person that you utilize. Be clear with that person about your financial goals and your challenges, because that's the only way that they can help you. And then finally, take advantage of the resources and tools that provider has. There's so many different tools, educational pieces that many of these providers have out there. And I will say again, that Bank of America's tools are essentially, I would say, top notch. I utilize them all the time. And then our final P is passion, right? And I love this quote because I really think it speaks to where we are now. And we are in such a time as this that we really need to understand that our dollars can really have a major impact. They can have our ability to build wealth can have an impact not only on our families and our extended families, but also on our communities, right? And our ability to build wealth at this time will have a lasting impact that can hopefully eradicate some of those things that we discussed at the opening of our presentation. So think about that passion. Think about the impact that your dollars can have and how you want your money to matter. And then finally, the 3 P's of investing, bringing it all together, right? Principle, understanding the basics and building from there. Purpose, it is your journey, your destination. You are unique, and your purpose will be unique. Passion, making your money matter, making the ability to build wealth for you and your family and your future generations, having that impact and mattering over time. So principle, purpose, passion. Your investment should be the intersection of all 3 of those. And so your time is now, right? I love this visual, and I think it's a great place for us to wrap it up and hopefully have some time for questions, right? Your time is now. There's no time like the present. This is a great opportunity for you to start if you haven't started already, or for you to continue on your journey, or for you to accelerate your journey. Right? You can do it. There are resources out there and begin thinking about how your investments can help you and your future generations build wealth over time. And so with that, I will stop and wrap it up, and we can open it up for questions. The final slide that we have here is just a listing of resources, and Tiffany will be able to provide an abbreviated version of our presentation, as well as the financial goals template and the financial or the Know Where You Are questionnaire. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies, very much. And Adrian, I think we've got just a couple of minutes left. So I think we've got some time for a couple of questions if anyone has any.
Okay, so the way that we're going to do this, ladies, if you have a question, please put them in the chat and we will look at the chat. And as you're called on, that will be your cue to unmute yourselves, okay? So go ahead and start using the chat. And as you all are doing that, I'm going to kick off with a question to get us going. So first of all, I want to thank you all for this outstanding information. And I cued in on something that was in the slides. And there was a slide that said something about emergency funds. And it noted $500 that you should have that. I think it was in your questionnaire. Can I've listened to a lot of different tips from financial so-called experts, right? And everyone has a different philosophy on how much you should really put into your emergency fund. Can you all share just a little bit more information on how we should be thinking about that emergency fund and how much to put away?
Yes, I'll take that. Thank you. Look, some people subscribe to Dave Ramsey, and one of the things that Dave Ramsey suggests is $1,000, right? And so you'll hear multiple numbers. $500 is this, I hesitate to call it arbitrary, but it's something that is meaningful and doable, so that you have money set aside for if your car breaks down, or something happens in your home, right? It is this bucket that you can access that won't throw your entire budget off. And so from my perspective, in thinking about that $500 number, depending on who you're talking to, $1,000 can sound daunting just to have sitting somewhere. And so as I thought about the questionnaire, again, I put it at $500 as this midpoint, right? That was meaningful, but maybe didn't seem as daunting as $1,000 could be.
Very good. Thank you, Naima. And we do have a question I see here from Latricia Brown, and she's asking, it's a question probably about allocation again. What are your thoughts on investing in Bitcoin?
Desi, you want to take that, or I can take that?
Yeah, I'll take that. So when you think about investing in anything, it's about understanding what you're investing in and doing your due diligence and what goal are you trying to accomplish. Certainly Bitcoin, is not regulated. So that's something that you have to think about. There is zero regulation when it comes to these unusual investments like Bitcoin. I always tell people, if it says you can be rich in 3 days or it appreciates in 1,000, hours, you probably need to think about that and evaluate how that's going to fit in your overall portfolio. I'm not going to go as far as saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying the facts are it's unregulated. You need to understand what you are getting yourself into. How do you get out of it? How do you get in it? Who's behind it? And simply put, do your diligence, as we talked about, research.
Great, thank you. And Tiffany, you can see the chat items as well, so we can share this task if you'd like.
Yeah, I see a question around gold as well. So
yeah,
Naima?
yeah, great question. Look, I would say gold in itself is an asset class. And remember, I talked about those three major asset classes, and I gave that analogy, shoes, right? So gold is its own asset class. And for many of our clients, they do have an allocation to gold, but it's important to understand its purpose, right? Mm-hmm. So gold typically is seen as a safe haven. And so when the stock market or equities are kind of going down, people tend to put more money in places like gold that are considered safe havens. So gold tends to have this opposite relationship with the stock market. From our perspective, it does have a small place in your allocation, not necessarily a large place. The other thing is that gold also does not generate additional income. So yes, it can appreciate or depreciate in value, but it's also an investment that doesn't give you income as well. So, same thing with Desi, we can't advise you to use it or to not use it, but it's important to understand the role that it plays in your investments, and that it has an opposite type of relationship with the stock market. It does not generate income, and you typically wouldn't have a large investment in gold as an asset class.
Great, wonderful. So, Adrian, I want to be respectful of everyone's time because I know that people have other things and want to get on with their evening. We can take another question, or we can go ahead and wrap it up and understand that we are available after this discussion and ongoing over the next several months. What do you think?
I don't see any other questions that have come up into the chat. And so what we can do, we can close out.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely phenomenal. And I want to thank you all for joining us on this journey, because we all know that Black women, we need this. We're already starting 38% behind, from an income standpoint when we start our first job. So I just want to recap, and then we'll say good night. So we want to thank you for those 3 principles of investing. We started with principles, we started with purpose and passion. And some key takeaways that I had was, number 1 is that your income is not wealth. So people who make a lot of money on their job does not mean that they are going to win at the end of the day, because they may spend it all. I got that.
That's right.
The second thing was play the stock market. Because the stock market grows back. Don't play it.
Don't play.
Be disciplined in your investment in the stock market, because it will grow and appreciate faster than your wages do. So that was another key point. And then diversify your assets by looking at the different asset classes, stocks, bonds, cash. And I really like that because I'm a golf player. So I was looking at, my short game versus my long game of what's going to happen there. Your passion was getting into your why, or your purpose was, why are you doing it? Mm-hmm. And then the passion was, why should you be passionate about this? It should be about your legacy. Mm-hmm. So with that, I want to thank Naima, Dr. Nash, for joining us this evening. Tiffany, we appreciate your partnership, and we will see you all again in November. You will see it posted on our website at Atlanta, NAASC.org under our events. So,
and we will be talking about taxes.
That's right.
Which is the other side of this discussion. So please, please, please tune in, listen in. We're building those blocks, so that by the time we get through this journey, Adrian, as you envisioned, we actually have a good game plan to move forward and set ourselves and our families, our community up for the next level of wealth creation.
That's right. So ladies, make sure that you check out the Facebook page, because I think it's time for us to talk just a little bit about stocks. What are you picking? What are you choosing? Can we be of advice and advisors to one another before choosing your actual financial advisor? And we have a great roster that we can draw upon from Bank of America. So again, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to mention that in the document that we will be sending, there's also a link to questions to ask a potential advisor.
That's wonderful. And Naima, I know that you are in Georgia, so can you
Yes.
drop your information into the chat?
Yes,
We
I will.
also have that, so available for individuals if they would like to take advantage of that as well.
I will.
Okay. Again, thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.